Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Reminder of our top stories. Hope rises for young Nigerians aspiring to political offices as President Muhammadu Buhari signs they're not too young to run bill into law, but with a caveat, they must wait until after 2019. For the second time, House of Representatives passes Electoral Act Amendment Bill, throws out electronic voting from document. Joint health sector workers suspend 45-day-old industrial action following the intervention of the National Industrial Court. And President Trump imposes metal tariffs on key allies. EU, Canada and Mexico vow to retaliate. ChannelsTV.com has more information for you. And on YouTube.com/ChannelsWeb, you can watch our videos. You can also watch us on your mobile device via your browser or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows devices from their respective stores. Besides giving you access to news and updates on the go, the Channels TV and Channels 24 app have an eyewitness feature that you can use to share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. Lawmakers in the Ogun State House of Assembly have passed a resolution approving the state government's request to give their consent to the federal government's plan to withdraw $1 billion from the excess crude account, the ECA, for the purchase of military hardware. The passage of the resolution followed a motion moved by the majority leader, Adeyinka Mafe, and supported by all the lawmakers through a voice vote. The planned $1 billion withdrawal from the excess crude account by the federal government has been a subject of controversy between the presidency and the National Assembly. It is almost a decade since Nigeria began the celebration of May 29th as Democracy Day. In 1999, President Olusegun Obasanjo was sworn in on May the 29th in a radical departure from the October 1st Independence Day. Since then, successive administrations had been enthroned on that day, a day that provides an opportunity for both self-assessment and critical analysis by the members of the public. This year, the 3-year-old Buhari administration also marked the Democracy Day with a 40-page document outlining the achievements of the government since May 29, 2015. Tonight, we continue with our focus on the 3 years of the Buhari government, and Channel's business editor Boson Omofaye takes a close look at the presidency's self-appraisal, the sticky points and the road ahead.
This administration has therefore focused on revamping the ailing economy it inherited in 2015.
The Buhari administration has always maintained that it inherited an economy in crisis, and that his team has focused on resolving these problems and placing it on a path of sustainable recovery and growth. From massive infrastructure spending to restructuring the debt market, efficiency and prudence in fiscal management, and the stability of the foreign exchange market, President Buhari and his team have scored themselves high on a number of indices.
For the first time, 30% of the budget was earmarked for capital expenditure, which represents an upward review when compared with the 2015 budget.
In terms of these macroeconomic headlines, not a few analysts and Nigerians agree with the administration.
The exchange rate has stabilized, though you can say, oh, it's quite high. And then central bank make sure that they maintain the monetary policy that will give confidence to the economy. Oh, people will say that, but the cost of borrowing is high. But well, those are some of the pills we have to take so that we don't witness recession again.
My quarrel is that not enough has been done. Excuses can be given. There are a lot of distractions in the policy. There are a lot of security issues. But they remain what they are, excuses. And I don't think people voted for excuses.
But the day-to-day realities of the past 3 years under the current administration presents a different picture.
We are still what the economists call a stagflation phase. There was still very high unemployment rate, high inflation rate, high lending rate, and other social indices were on the decline. So even though we recovered, the economy was not doing very well.
For his part, President Muhammadu Buhari wants Nigerians to be patient with his government. He believes the initiatives of his economic recovery and growth plan will lay a solid foundation for a better economic future. But what do Nigerians think of the road ahead?
As you are aware, then the government put in place the economic recovery and growth plan. It was supposed to, as the name says, the economy should recover and then be on a growth trajectory. If that is properly implemented, we will be on a growth trajectory.
What government should really target is to engage in policies that will create a faster growth so that we outweigh the population growth.
There's a lot of foundational work that needed to be done this period. This government was distracted. I don't think it was focused enough, but let's see how it goes.
On Tuesday this week, the Buhari administration began the final 365 days of his 4-year term. Those 52 weeks will be critical for the president and his team to make good on all their socio-economic plans and promises and gear up to contest for another term, because another May 29 is just around the corner. Boston Namofaye, Channels Business News.
Indeed, 2 decades since Nigeria began celebration of May 29th as Democracy Day. Let's now take a deeper look at this and join in me to assess the Buhari administration's performance on the economy in the past 3 years is a partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte, Nigeria, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on the News at 10 at this time. How much success do you think the Buhari administration has made in terms of macroeconomic realignment, if you will, from its starting point on May 29th, 2015?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think in looking at the past 3 years, it's important to appreciate what the issues on the table were. You know, that gives us a good sense. I think everybody kind of agreed that we've gone through some very tough economic times over the past 3 years. The indices as it stands today, some of the key indices appear to be very positive. We're only hoping that we can continue with this kind of vigor to implement so that perhaps some of the lost time at the earlier phase of the administration can be recovered as we move along.
You said we're on a positive trajectory. What are the positives?
Well, positive trajectory, for example, if you look at the GDP growth rate, we slipped into recession. Q1 2016, even though the growth rate has been on the decline much earlier than that. And by Q1 of 2016, it was negative growth. And we had that continuously up until Q2 of 2017. As we speak today, GDP growth rate is about 1.95% or thereabout. For reserves, it's gone back to the neighborhood of 50 billion US dollar. Inflation is reducing, still higher to 12.5%. So those kind of indices, and you see that they are the cumulative impact of some of the initiatives that the government backed upon, like the ERGP, the sanity that we eventually restored into the FX market and all of that. But the point I did make earlier was that imagine the possibilities if many of those reforms and initiatives started way earlier in the life of the administration. So we've had 3 years, but to my mind, we've only had effectively about 2 years of implementing many of those strategies because of our late start. We didn't have the cabinet constituted until 6 months into the administration, about November.
Did that hurt the economy?
Of course it does hurt the economy, because we were falling economically. The GDP growth was falling. We know we were heading for the lower end of the table. So we needed to have started much quicker. Imagine if some of those policy reforms that we started having later in 2017 started way early in the year. Cabinet was reconstituted 6 months. Was constituted 6 months. The budget for 2016 was passed in May. The budget for 2017 was passed in June. The budget for 2018 hasn't been passed. So if you are in a recession, you needed to put in all of the resources into capital projects, and all of that. And you needed to start that as early as you needed to.
If you will, this administration rode on a welfarist and a popularist socio-economic platform, if you remember that. But do you think that the regime has delivered fairly enough for the Nigerian people, especially when you look at items like consumer goods in the markets and how expensive food has become?
Well, again, I think you can separate the impact that's been felt in the market with, the macroeconomic realities that the government is faced with. So if you've had your foreign exchange depleted to the level that it was when the administration came in, oil price fell from the record high to something below $30 US per barrel. In fact, when the 2016 budget was being presented, the benchmark oil was trading far below that particular benchmark. So the government got into crisis mode, and you needed to first of all restore some stability. Now that the growth rate is back, we can begin to feel the impact. Again, I mean, you will agree with me, and maybe I will agree with many of the people that would say that the honeymoon that started didn't appear to have lasted as long as it would, but I think the realities dictated what happened.
I'd like to thank you so much indeed, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. You are indeed a partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte, Nigeria. Thank you for your thoughts.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
At 10. Victims of insurgency and residents of affected communities in Adamawa State have been given the assurance of programs and resources that will give them some respite after a long battle with Boko Haram. The Deputy Governor gave this assurance during the inauguration of some projects by the Victims Support Fund.
The northeast part of the country has undeniably suffered so much destruction, all from the activities of the terror group Boko Haram. Adamawa State is one of the worst hit, with many things going with the destruction. But with relative peace returning to the area, Adamawa State is now a construction site with the rebuilding of the state in partnership with the Victim Support Fund. Here, they are commissioning some of the projects for use. One of them is a new secretariat for Michika local government area.
I commissioned this solid rock for the benefit of Michika people and the glory of God Almighty.
This is part of the effort of Victim Support Fund to support the restoration of local governance to places that have been devastated by Boko Haram. And some of the devastation and the causes of the insurgency we know is because of the number of ungoverned territories, the absence of the weakness of local governance.
With this commissioning, the state government is tasking leaders at the council level to provide viable representation.
We have directed all structures of leadership, such as local government council leaders, development areas administrators, and traditional rulers to relocate to the affected areas. This is intended to restore confidence in the populace and also provide the needed guide for recovery efforts.
Aside from these new buildings, there are other ongoing works to make life bearable for the survivors of the reign of terror.
Your Excellency, as we are speaking, the bridge that we have just crossed, the foundation line is taking place by next week. The piling work will start on the bridges.
Residents are grateful for these interventions, both from the government and its partners. But they are calling for more help that will make life close to what it used to be.
When the news at 10 returns, Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachiku, offers to resign if local refineries fail to deliver 80% capacity by 2019. That's some business news. Do join us again.